Killam School Building Committee meeting. We have some people online, so we'll take a roll call vote. Pat?
Here.
Sean?
Here.
John?
I'm here.
Chris?
Here.
Kirk?
Here.
Ed?
Here.
Greg?
Here.
Nancy?
Here.
And Carla's here. Thank you, everyone. Quick review of the agenda. We will have public comment, liaison reports, update from our designers on traffic and the energy feasibility study, the OPM update for financials and schedule. We will have a spirited debate about Chapter 149 and 149A. We'll review meeting minutes and then talk about next meetings. So is there any public comment online?
Ray Porter for public comment.
Go ahead, Ray.
Ray Porter, RMLD Commissioners, Reading, Franklin Street. Just want to support the recommendation that will be coming up before the committee, the recommendation from the Sustainability Committee. RMLD has worked with the architect and went through the options available, which will be presented, and continue to offer their support for the project. So supporting that recommendation, that'll be part of tonight's discussion, and just putting that out there at this point in the meeting. Thank you.
Thanks, Ray. Anyone else? Seeing none, we'll move on. Are there any liaison reports? Anyone online? Okay. We'll go to the designer update. Jenny and Lee.
Hi, folks.
Jenny?
I'm gonna give a little traffic report and then talk about the HVAC with a much reduced palette of slides. I gave you all a more comprehensive backup for you to study over the weekend, but have really compressed it down. But if there's any questions, I have all those slides as backup. So hopefully a quick update on the traffic. I don't think that the proposed layout has changed much since we last looked at it. We have a loop road, a long parent loop drop-off that allows us to get lots of the queuing cars off of Charles Street. And that loop drop-off goes around a staff parking area with enough parking for all of the K-5 and the RISE teachers. The bus drop-off from, the buses come into the site from Haverhill Street, drop off here on the south side of the building, and then exit into the parking queue. There's a active and loading, unloading zone of 8 vehicles right in front of the school where no parking is allowed. But along the rest of the drive here marked in red, there's parallel parking for parents along that road. And we're also proposing these off-site improvements that would create actual legal parking spaces on Charles Street, which don't currently exist, but those improvements would not be part of the Killam project. We're just recommending that that be done. So the part that I wanted to share with you is the traffic modeling that was done by our traffic engineer that shows, based on their model, what the traffic conditions would look like with the added, with the new design and the added load of the RISE kids. So in the, I think I have 4 of these slides, there's 4 different scenarios. This is the morning drop off for the K-5. So the K-5 and the pre-K drop off and pick up are staggered, so that all those cars aren't arriving at the same time. So in the morning during the K-5 arrival, we expect 195 vehicles. And with that, we expect to have 8 vehicles in the active unloading zone, 22 queued on-site, and 6 vehicles queued off-site. So currently in what we observed last January, there were cars queued all the way down to Wakefield Street. So it's a big improvement from the current condition. And when the pre-K preschoolers arrive, their school starts 20 minutes later than the K through 5 students. We expect 81 vehicles. We expect 4 of those to be dropping off in the active unloading zone, and then 30 vehicles parked on site, because more parents with little kids, more of them park and walk their kids in rather than chuck them out the back door. And in the afternoon, which is the most challenging condition at the Killam, with the pre-K departure, we expect 53 vehicles, and 30 of those would be parked on site, and then 23 would be parked on Charles Street and or Haverhill Street, these parking spots on Haverhill Street. And in the K through 5 departure, this is the most challenging condition, partly because one of the guiding principles for traffic that we had at the start was that the practice, which they currently have at the school, of parents primarily parking and then walking to pick up their kids, is an important part of building and maintaining a sense of community at the Killam. So they wanted to maintain that, even though it's a little bit less efficient in terms of moving vehicles through than a rolling pickup. So we anticipate that a few kids, 4th and 5th graders, may still be picked up in a rolling pickup. And we anticipate that would be 24 vehicles that those families would choose to, communicate with their kids and just wait there for me, I'll pick you up. And the remaining cars would be parked, with 30 parked on site and 91 cars parked off site. So we do still have cars parked all the way down Charles Street and along Haverhill Street and along these tributary roads. The difference is that there is, from the current condition, is right now there's no legal parking, or the only legal parking is on Haverhill Street. So every parent who's waiting there to pick up their kids has to be parked illegally, which creates, I think, a condition where it's like, what's the difference if you park on this side of the street or that side of the street? Like, you're gonna have to park illegally anyway. So by providing a way for people to pick up their kids and park legally, hopefully, and supporting that with some targeted enforcement, hopefully you can improve the parking conditions of some of the issues right now with people parking on both sides of the street and people can't drive by and parking too close to the corners and things like that. Any questions about the parking? I mean, the traffic, which is the parking. No? Okay.
Actually,
Yeah.
Go ahead, John.
Sorry, not a question so much as a comment. I guess my only concern about this, and I'm not sure that it's solvable, the vehicle arrival period of 2:40 to 3 for the afternoon is, let's say, overly optimistic in our experience. I mean, at all the schools, parents start queuing by like 2:20 for 2:45 pickups, right? So I don't think whatever this model proposes is going to happen in that 2:20 to 2:40 timeline is actually going to happen. I think it's going to be more congested than that. I'm not sure there's a design that solves for that sort of behavioral problem, but it's kind of the reality we need to expect here.
That comment did come up in our community traffic meeting, and what our traffic consultant said is that one of the reasons that people arrive so early is because there is no legal place to park. So they arrive earlier to get a better spot. It's kind of like, reacting to the existing conditions. And they have found that when they improve traffic conditions at schools, then people realize after a while, like, oh, I actually don't have to be an hour early. I can just come 15 minutes early and I'll be able to get a spot and it'll be fine. So you're right, we can't control people's behavior, but hopefully we are optimistic that this will improve even that.
If I may just say one thing, the word safety, we should say it 400 times. Having all those parking spaces contiguous to the site on both sides, on Haverhill and on Charles, giving them real, sidewalks and parking spaces on one side of the street, it changes everything about this traffic plan. And it's much safer, it's much more pragmatic. It is a great improvement over what's happening right now, even this worst condition. Because on the worst condition, you actually have people parked on both sides of all those side streets going way back. It's, as we all know, it's crazy. And so I think, having watched this develop, I think it's a good effort. And I think as long as you hire GPI or whatever, which you already have in the past, to work on your side streets and all of that, you can really make great strides. Thank you.
This will be the school with the best traffic pattern, hands down. People are so concerned about it and they're concerned about the nuances. Just to have all of this on-site parking and spots available, and then it hands down, it will be the model school, in my opinion.
Did you have a comment?
Yeah, well, so, Sean kind of asked the same question, made the same observation that I did, is just, because I think the anticipation is that most of the loops parking at 225 to 240 will be for pre-K, and then, but behavior has been that, even, K through 5 parents are there at that same time. Hopefully that improves over time, that once they cycle out, the pre-K cycles out, then there's more, spots, kind of in the loop for K to 5 parents. But the question that I had was, do we know how many buses kind of come through, morning and afternoon? I know that it says there's room for 5, I didn't even.
Four.
4.
Yeah, and as you know, and the superintendent knows, one of them just comes by, drops off 5 kids and leaves. Like it's very light, and they don't anticipate that increasing because it's a neighborhood school and there'd be no reason for it to increase.
And then remind me again how wide the
drop off?
Yeah.
I believe it's 20 feet is the travel lane. It's super wide because that's the width that's needed for emergency access.
Perfect.
Yeah, so wherever you are, you can always, if someone's parked on the side, dropping someone off or anywhere, you can always drive by easily.
You could probably drive by 3 cars.
Yeah, because we worked with the fire department and everybody too, who loved this loop. They loved their loop.
Good?
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, on to our entree. So the energy feasibility study, this is just a recap of our goals for this analysis and what you asked us to investigate. We've checked off the first 5, and we're kind of coming back with another pass at the cost comparison from our discussion in November. Would anyone like me to review the HVAC systems and go through what they are? Would that be helpful?
The reason that
Shaking head.
the reason that Jenny's asking is because if the people who are on the sustainability committee raised their hand or were at the last meeting, who was at the last
Nancy, John, and
sustainability
Pat.
meeting? Were you? You don't know.
Greg was not.
About half. Okay, so we want to be understanding that not everybody understands all of this, and we want to show you what the recommendation is, but we're willing to backtrack. So do you want,
Spend 2 minutes just
Okay.
going through those options, please.
So the full geothermal is a system that is pulling, using the ground as a heat sink to pull heat, kind of like a refrigerator or an air conditioning unit, but using the ground as the sink rather than the air. And that option has 60 geothermal wells. It's also, I have the energy use intensity on here. It's the most efficient of these systems, but not by far, because the hybrid geothermal and the half geothermal are very similar, around 25 and 26.5 EUI. The hybrid geothermal is the same as the full geothermal, but with 40 wells, it's not producing as much heat and cooling from the wells themselves. So for the coldest days and the hottest days, there's a added cooling tower to provide more cooling and a boiler to provide more heating. The half geothermal is a little more complex to explain. It separates two parts of the heating and cooling system. So in addition to actually heating the spaces, we're also providing ventilation to provide fresh air into the classrooms. That fresh air comes from outside and it has to be heated as well. In the full geothermal system, the geothermal heat is being used to heat and cool that fresh air in addition to heating and cooling the rooms. In the half geothermal, we've separated those two systems. So the ground source heat pump is being used to heat and cool the rooms via basically like a radiator. It's called a chilled beam, but similar to a radiator. And the ventilation air is heated and cooled via an air source heat pump, more like one that you would buy for your house, like a mini split kind of situation. And then the air source system is an air source heat pump, right? It's a little bit less efficient, has a higher energy use intensity because it's still using that same kind of refrigerator, air conditioning technology, but rather than using the ground as a heat sink, it's using the air as a heat sink, and the air has higher variability in its temperature, so it's less efficient. And then the chiller boiler is gas-fired, a gas-fired boiler, an electric chiller, which are still, the efficiencies of this equipment are still, quite high compared to equipment that was available, 10 or 20 years ago. But that's definitely the least the least efficient system in terms of energy use intensity. Okay, good. So then you asked us to dig a little deeper into the Inflation Reduction Act and what is anticipated to happen with this with the new administration. So we called on this nonprofit called Undaunted K-12, who have been a great resource for us. They're a nonprofit that both lobbies for bills to support green schools and is a resource for information for industry. So they published an explainer and kind of their opinion of what they think is likely to happen with IRA. So that's just shared bullet pointed for you here. So their points are, the IRA did receive bipartisan support, and there is no appropriation that's required to fund the IRA. So those are kind of points in favor of thinking that this funding may be more secure. But on the con side, they share that Republican leaders have sent strong signals that the new administration is likely to pursue some changes to the IRA. They've specifically called it out, and it's unclear. There's some parts of the legislation that are clearly more at risk than others, but this piece of the legislation called elective pay, which is the piece that applies to funding for schools, it's quite unclear how that will fare in this. And the administration has indicated that they intend to pass the tax bill within the first 100 days. So if that happens, then we'll know sooner rather than later what is to happen. Any questions about that? Okay, so then I've taken out all the in-between stuff and just gone straight to the summary. So this summary contains 4 different scenarios. Starting from the left, there's a no solar PV with IRA funding, no solar PV without IRA funding, with solar PV with IRA funding, and with solar PV without IRA funding. And in each scenario, there's the town share less incentives and grants. We could call it the first cost, and then the life cycle cost. So if we look at this, the numbers highlighted in red are the lowest cost under each scenario. And the one in yellow, the half geothermal, is the sustainability working group recommendation. So what this shows is that the IRA is such a game changer in this scenario. Whether it stays in effect or does not stay in effect really dramatically changes the viability of these options. The recommendation of the working group is, since we don't know what's going to happen with the IRA, to balance that unknown by selecting the option that is not the best in any scenario, or not the lowest cost in either scenario, with or without IRA, but is a good contender in either scenario. The working group also points out that the half geothermal system is less complex than the hybrid geothermal. There's less equipment, and it's simpler to maintain. It has, to a certain extent, not 100% redundancy, but some redundancy, so that if the geothermal side fails, the air side system is unaffected. If the air side system fails, the geothermal is unaffected, which would help you to maintain some building operations, again, not 100% on the coldest day of the year, but provides some redundancy, which increases the building's resiliency. And it's offers optimal energy performance and reduces operational carbon. It's only slightly less efficient than the most efficient option we had, which is the full geothermal.
I wasn't at that meeting, and after I saw your choice, I was like, well, that's clever. And I just wanted to add 2 or 3 thoughts towards that. One, this is the exact system that Swampscott ended up with, that you went to visit. And the reason it ended up with that system was because there was no IRA, it didn't exist. And this was after they went through their own calculations and all of this. This was the most pragmatic, long-term and short-term and least, kind of redundant system. It's actually very simple. I like it because it has less wells. Wells cost a lot of money to drill. And one of the things that Pat had said in the past was the difference between 44 wells and drilling them in time and 60 wells, I believe, is about a month and a half of work or something. It could be of time. And also we have a tight site. So the idea of drilling less wells while still maintaining a geothermal system has advantages to it. And I like that people thought about what if it happens or it doesn't. Pat asked me before the meeting, if it turns out that we know in a couple months that the IRA is gonna happen no matter what, can we change our mind? And I said, as the architect, I said, as long as it happens pre-vote, June whatever, and the next day we start drawing our drawings, I believe that we can go to a full geothermal system if that's what you choose, if that's how you go. That is my, because I think that's only fair, and I'd like to say that. If you wait too long, of course, it'll cost money in redesign. Right now, we've only done narratives and some design. And we'll work with the mechanical engineer. So I wanted to say those few points. I hope that was helpful.
I just want to clarify what happened at the last meeting of the sustainability group. And clarify the roles of people. It's not up to us as the committee to make recommendations concerning what system is to use. It's up to the mechanical engineers and the architect to give a recommendation and for us to accept or reject that recommendation. I think we've got it backwards if we think we're just a bunch of dilettantes. You know, we don't know nothing about air conditioning and stuff like that. I mean, I know something about the laws of thermodynamics, but I'm not a mechanical engineer, and was this guy? Or this lady?
Yeah, but he is.
But not us, but he wasn't there.
That's true.
So, I mean, we seem to be having the attitude that we are recommending a system. No. The mechanical engineers have to recommend a system and give their reasons, and we have to say we agree with them or disagree with them.
How would you categorize your decision to put forth a certain system then?
Well, what happened at the meeting was that the mechanical engineers were very reluctant to give any recommendations. They kept giving numbers and figures and stuff like that. In the end, I asked them, what is your gut feeling?
Sure.
What is your recommendation as professionals? And then they came up with this recommendation.
Sure.
And
Good.
we all agreed with it. And that's the way it should be. So let's not couch it in the terms that we are the ones deciding on the system. No, we're not. You as the architect and your subconsultants, they're the ones deciding on the system and giving a recommendation based upon their expertise. And it's up to us to accept or reject it. So I just want to get that clarified.
I agree.
We're not designers. We're not designers.
I agree with John, and what I would say is this. A recommendation is based on a lot of things. And it can be based just on numbers, and it can be done, or it can be based on all the criteria that we've learned is important to this group, but also to Reading and to your sensibilities and to your other people. So our recommendation needs to be based on a lot of criteria. Everything we feel in here too. I mean, it's not black and white, it's a gray zone. So this is the best recommendation that seems to meet as best as possible all the criteria that we've heard about. The uncertainty of the IRA, the desire to have an electric building but have it not be too complicated, the best energy for the future but not to, to all those different things. So I totally agree with you, and I feel good about this choice if you do. And I do want you to feel good about it because you've learned so much about it. But you're right that in the end, we have to stand behind our work and our recommendation. But we are terribly people pleasers, and we do want you to be happy. And this has been something that has taken a lot of time, and we want to hear from a couple other people to see how they feel about this approach. Thanks, John. Anybody else have some thoughts?
Yeah, I thought it was a really good meeting. I kind of agree and disagree, John. Obviously, everything we do needs to be on a recommendation from our structural, our mechanical, but they need to work within parameters we give them. For example, if we gave our mechanical engineer the parameter that we don't have enough money to build this building, and we need to do the absolute lowest, initial cost, then they need to react to that. That's not what we told them, and that's not where we are. But there does need to be a little more than simply a recommendation from the designers. It's a back and forth. It was great that you kind of forced the mechanical engineer to pick one. That was very helpful to the conversation. I thought it was an excellent meeting. I thought a bunch of different people came to the same conclusion from a different direction. I was kind of focused on the fact that with or without the IRA, it looked like the half geothermal kind of always came in second, or in a very close second. And when you look at the energy usage, I think it's 25 and full geothermal is 24.6, so it's very close. There's discussion about the potential. There was a little bit of discussion about half and hybrid geothermal, which I couldn't give too much information on, like the mechanical systems. But again, the mechanical engineer was very helpful there in pointing out to us that he felt like the half geothermal was a much simpler system with less operating, effectively less moving and operating parts, with Joe and Kevin really liked. And it does have some redundancy. Careful when we say redundancy, the air side and the geothermal side, standing alone, wouldn't heat and cool the building in the coldest and warmest days, so it would be operational. But if the geothermal was completely down, the air side would keep the building, you know, tempered to not freeze, and in a shoulder season, you know, could probably operate the building. And those were just sort of the different stakeholders had at the meeting had different things they were latching onto, but for the most part, everyone was kind of, you know, moving towards that same center point. And you definitely, when you prompted the mechanical engineer to pick one, as I would say.
Otherwise, we were getting nowhere. You know, nobody was giving an opinion. You know, you can't give opinions. You got
that definitely helped a lot.
Next time you want an opinion desperately, ask me.
Careful.
What I'm saying is the professionals have to design this building, and they have to lead, and we have to follow to a large extent, and you know, accept or reject what you say and give you feedback. But we're not the designers. We're a committee, and we don't design by committee anytime.
If you look at the notes from about 4 months ago, Lee Sherwood was shown to have said, I think you should do the half geothermal system. And if you look back, you will find that.
Good.
I actually did.
I'm very comfortable that the sustainability group would recommend going with the mechanical engineer's recommendation.
I totally agree with the outcome, but I don't want this committee to get into a situation where it's thought that we are the ones that are deciding on the color of the carpet in the multi-purpose room. You know, we're not. We're just saying yes or no to what the professionals tell us. The structural engineer is going to say, I'm going to use steel for this and wood for this and stuff like that. And we're going to say yes because you've made a good case for it. Don't ask us to tell you what to do. And I thought we were kind of getting a little bit along that way where you were looking for us to tell you what we thought. No, we're just a bunch of amateurs, you know.
So one of the people who is not an amateur is, and I said that in the English way, an amateur, is Joe Huggins. Is he online?
Should be.
Yes, I am.
Joe, were you at that meeting?
Yes, I was, and I just want to say that I think Pat said it very well. Kevin and I both felt as though that this option to have geothermal did give us at least a level of redundancy that we're comfortable with, because obviously we like to have that, and our job is to keep the schools open and not have a risk of a freeze up or a shutdown for any particular reason. So with that was one of the big deciding factors for both myself and Kevin, and less moving parts also. So we're pretty happy with the decision that's been made.
Ray Porter has his hand up online.
Yeah, thank you. As such, a house is not a school, but in one house I have a ground source heat pump, a geothermal, in another house I have a air source heat exchanger. The idea of combining the two technologies in this way, I think, is going to be very beneficial. It takes care of the limitations of both systems by being able to overlap, and I think it'll be able to optimize heating and cooling for the use of the system as it goes. It doesn't have to be heat the whole school or cool the whole school. You'll be able to target that in a very efficient way. Also, I'm pleased that as we considered the numbers and options, that the benefits of solar are factored in. So you see the benefit that results on the life cycle cost. So the discussions we had with the architects, RMLD, I support the recommendation.
Wasim?
Wasim?
Good evening, everyone. This is Wasim, CES. I want to start with thank you, John, to ask me this question and that forced me to answer it. I just want to clarify here, as Pat said, we want to be careful about redundancy. Maybe best to say it's resilience. So our system is more resilient than a full geothermal system because I have two systems on board. It's not only one system feeding the whole school. I have different technology to feed the school. So if one fail, I have another one to carry some of the load. We will not be able to feed the whole thing, but we will be able maybe to keep it operating in a seasonal or shoulder season. I just want to clarify this so we are all on the same page. I'm happy that everyone's agreed on this system. I believe is the best on the whole options that we have there.
Thank you, Wasim.
That's the end of my presentation.
So just one thing, as we move into the design, one thing that I think will be helpful is to take a look at a cross-section from the existing building to the street and where the geothermal wells, other utilities, the foundation, the unsuitables, and some different things. I think those are questions you're gonna need to answer, like number one, figuring out where finished floor is. And, you know, my brain immediately goes next to the process of, you know, how we contract it and how we get the wells installed. You know, we talked about an early package, or maybe you just put it in the contract. But if we could, I would imagine you'd need to do that. If we could get something like that, that would be very helpful. Just a cross section showing the, you know, the relative elevations of the different parts.
And I will answer that by saying that over the last 2 months, while doing other work as well, we have been redesigning and pushing the contours on the entire site and finding the right elevation for the new building, which is actually almost in line with Haverhill Street now, just a couple feet higher.
Okay.
It really barely slopes up because we wanted it as low as possible, but still be able to drive in from Charles and way up high and have all the right slopes to come across the whole site. We spent a lot of time on that. We've also looked at the foundation of the existing building, the distance of the new building during construction, so that we know that we can build a new building without any underpinning. So we've done all kinds of that work to verify that we have the building in the right place at the right height. I think we're very close.
Excellent.
I did that.
That's what you wanted to hear, I bet.
Yeah.
Could I just?
John, I think John's already done it too.
I already did that as well, but could I just ask one question?
Because you have an expertise in
that is-
structural.
I was just gonna say, who's the expert now?
No, that is, well, you know, I always check things, you know.
No, go ahead.
Trust but verify, it's Reagan's thing. Question of the new building versus the old one, where it is.
Yeah.
Has the fire department signed off on what they require for access between the two buildings, the new one under construction and the existing one, during construction? In other words, is there enough room for them to be happy with firefighting?
We haven't spoke specifically with them about the in-between construction time and that slot between. I do know that the tightest it ever gets is 21, 22 feet, and then everything else. So there is a slot of at least that, and it gets a lot more than that in other places. That's the pinch point. And I'm guessing that they will have enough access, at least we can make enough access for them, at least for parking on the side and bringing their hoses from either side.
I mean, it's just an issue that I think.
No, it's the next steps, yeah.
I believe some of the wells were a little closer, were they not, from my memory? Not the building itself, but some of the wells, and that might reduce the access around there. And are they happy to have that?
At points where, at certain points during
it needs
construction.
reviewing.
Okay, thank you.
Great.
Do we have a vote?
I think we're ready for a vote.
I'm gonna make a motion. I move that the Killam School Building Committee accept the recommendations of the Sustainability Advisory Group to go with half geothermal.
Second.
And we'll do a roll call vote.
I'd like a discussion.
Oh, sorry, discussion.
Would it not be better to accept the recommendations of the design team
Sure, if you want it that
rather
way.
than the sustainability committee?
Sure.
How about it would be both? Because the whole idea of having working groups was that they were gonna do the work and verify a lot of things with other inputs and then bring those recommendations back here. So you just like in the educational group, we talked to the experts, we got information from the designers and their experts. And then once it was vetted out, we brought it back. So
Can we say in collaboration
In
with?
collaboration.
Yes.
Yes, that sounds great, in collaboration, so accepted.
Any other discussion? Pat,
Yes.
Sean,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Kirk,
Yes.
Ed,
Yes.
Greg,
Yes.
Nancy,
Yes.
and Carla, yes, and the motion passes. I feel like we should be clapping.
I know. Let's
This is,
say, shall we?
That was harder than a lot.
Thank you, really, thank you to LBA, to Colliers, to Wasim and his group, to the sustainability working group. This was a huge undertaking. This was one of our monumental and most important decisions. So, thank you, because I feel like we got to where we got to, and I feel like everybody's happy with the outcome.
Remember when you talk about this to your constituents, that half geothermal with air source means that it's still a fully electric building that happens to just take energy from a couple different places, but mostly from the ground. And they should know that when they cared, obviously, people from the public who cared so much about this are probably getting what they were requesting in the beginning. Just want people to remember that.
And presumably it's at least 50% from the ground.
I think it's a lot more than that. If we actually go through the numbers with Wasim just at another time, it actually, it's just at very peak times that it can't carry the whole load from the ground. That's my understanding.
We haven't talked about photovoltaics.
No.
Is that later on the agenda? I can't remember.
Another day.
Another day?
Yeah,
Maybe?
it's
Okay.
best to,
Next time we meet, January 22nd.
another day.
Another day.
It's an add-on.
Well, congratulations, everyone. On that note, we'll get to the finances. Thank you guys so much for allowing us to have the designer speak first. Part of our financial updates is in tune piece of finding out which direction you wanted to go to. So that said. All right, so I'm just gonna share my screen for the financial updates. That will allow me. Oops, I do not want everyone. There you go. Okay, can everyone see my screen? All right, so up on the screen is our typical overall summary. Again, we typically don't spend that much time on the slides, kind of just the backups are in the slides as we get through it. Unless anyone has any questions, I will move on to the budget adjustments. So we actually do have an update on budget adjustments, and this is a new item, but I will actually propose to return to this slide. I will explain within the committed costs, and then we can come back to this budget adjustments if that's okay with everyone. So within our committed costs, which is where we actually have 3 listed at this time. For committed costs or any contracts, new contract POs, and right now, if you guys actually recall, over the last summer, we actually talked about doing an SD cost estimate. So what the first committed costs is actually is for Amendment 1 for Colliers to have AM Fogarty, who's our third-party cost estimator. Now this is just bringing forth that cost, and I apologize, we should have brought this sooner, but we did discuss this over the summer. Now we're just at that point, and that's what we're recommending for this cost is the $15,500 for that piece. Alongside that is LBA's Amendment 11, which is for $1,540. What this is, as you know, with all this investigation of HVAC systems, we actually had them assist us with further cost estimating, and that's what this piece is for, just for that additional cost. Alongside that is the third committed cost. What we're recommending is Amendment 12 for LBA. For that, along the backup is actually for the test wells, knowing that this was part of the discussions with the HVC direction. So those three are the ones we will recommend for this month's committed costs. I can come back to this, but basically that's what this adjustment is for, is that $1,500 for that recommendation of the SD costs estimating for our piece. So that's what the adjustment is for. So just to clarify what this is. Moving down to our invoices for this month. This is actually LBA's October LBA services, which totals to $113,354.70. So that's the top three that's combined. Next will be our CPL, actually November invoices for this month, which is $26,444. As of right now, we do not have LBA's November, which you'll see at the next January meeting, just to clarify. We are technically a month behind, but that's okay, just for records. So those are the two invoices that we have, if you will, because it's a combination for LBA, which we can ask to vote towards the end if that's okay. And then moving to our cost, cash flow. Again, this ebbs and flows. We can continue to monitor this, but we're in the positive, which is great. It's actually better seen at the graphs, if you will. We're keeping track of this, and I'm sure, as you know, once we approve this, this will obviously increase from those approved expenditures for this month. As far as the schedule goes, we actually just went ahead and highlighted this piece just to make it a little bit easier for everyone. We're moving well into the SD cost estimating piece, along with just kind of moving on to where we're going with MSBA and moving on to our next focus, which will be the vote. But that's kind of where we currently stand for the overall schedule timeline. So I know I went through this pretty quickly, but does anyone have any questions?
Is the end date right, John?
Yes, I did make sure.
Thank you.
to your point, I did confirm it was. If anything, I actually improved the closeout time frame for you. But I did in fact confirm it was unfortunately just a month to day conversion,
Yeah,
but it is still correct.
How it happens.
Yes. Yep. So thank you. I can go back to any invoices if anyone has any questions. I think that's the one that's really.
Do we need a vote or two separate votes for the one for the commitments and one for the invoices?
I think
Think
that's
so,
probably
yes.
what's
Yep.
going to do it.
Shaman commitments right now. Yep.
I'll make a motion to accept or approve the three commitments presented by Colliers.
Second.
Second. Any discussion? So we're talking about Collier's Amendment 1, LBA's Amendment 11 and 12. And so amendment number 1 for 15,500, LBA's Amendment 11 for 1,540, and LBA's Amendment 12 for 66,924. Any discussion? Nope. Okay. Pat?
Yes.
Sean?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Ed?
Yes.
Greg?
Yes.
Nancy?
Yes.
And Carla, yes. And the amendment passes.
Thank you.
You want me to tackle this one? Move to accept, approve two invoices, one for LBA on invoice number 21043 in the amount, and surely make sure I have this right, $13,354.70?
113,000.
Oh, 113,354 and
Yep.
70 cents.
Correct.
And invoice number Collier's invoice number 1005306 in the amount of $26,444.
I think that might be 1005366, is that right?
1005306.
06.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
No, that's okay.
Second?
Seconded by Pat. Any discussion? Seeing none. Pat?
Yes.
Sean?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Kirk?
Yes.
Ed?
Yes.
Greg?
Yes.
Nancy?
Yes.
And Carla? Yes. And the motion passes. Thank you, everyone.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Shirley.
Thank you.
Schedule?
So we went through the schedule. That was the last slide.
Yeah.
I'm at chapter 149 versus 149A.
Yes.
So, congratulations, everyone. So happy you guys came to a consensus on the HVAC direction. That said, I'm sure we've had plenty of discussions with the 149 versus 149A approach. Now that we've made this decision, I think we can still work on the early packages and have that discussion of the well sites, the drilling, even the electrical early packages with switchgear, generator, which we're actually working with Whitman on at this time. With all that being said, I think, in my opinion, there is a kind of a direction that we could move forward towards, but I'm open to this discussion with this group on if they have a preference on the approach of either the 149 or the 149A.
I'll just, John,
Yes,
John,
please.
John
I mean,
and
that's
Jump in.
just quickly, chapter 149 is design, bid,
Bid,
build,
build, correct.
where we'll complete the design, put it out to bid to a contractor. Chapter 149A, we would hire a construction manager at risk that would participate in the design process. I think John and I have summed up our positions. We don't think it's complicated enough to warrant CM at risk, and I think there's data out there that shows it's somewhere between a 5 and 20% premium that I don't think is warranted.
I would second that.
So
Don't disagree. I didn't want to sway in any direction. I feel like we can all come to a conclusion unless anyone else has any other opinions. But I think we can make that work as well.
Do we need a vote for that?
Yes.
Yes,
Go
please.
ahead, John, you do the motion.
you gotta do the
You
honor.
gotta throw him a bone.
Please, yes.
We're not taking this
Make sure we
can
have
down
it, make sure we have it in the minutes.
I'm
It's
not ready.
it's reluctantly that he's going to make this motion.
I move that the committee accepts the recommendation of Collier's that we proceed on the basis of chapter 149, construction,
Design, bid, build.
design, bid, build, yes. Yes.
Second.
Seconded by Nancy. Any discussion? Okay, moving to the vote.
Very exciting.
Yes.
Sean,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Kirk,
Yes.
Ed,
Yes.
Greg,
Yes.
Nancy,
Yes.
and Carla, yes.
Wonderful. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I feel like we need to clap again.
I know. Big milestone today.
John set everyone straight at the last meeting, and I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Make decisions and move forward.
That's right.
Okay, so moving to the meeting minutes of the last meeting. So for the 11:20 meeting minutes. Everybody had a chance to review?
Okay.
Okay, take a second. Sure.
I move to accept the meeting, the 11/20/2024 meeting minutes as submitted.
Second.
Seconded by Ed. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none. Pat?
Yes.
Sean?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Kirk?
Yes.
Ed?
Yes.
Greg?
Yes.
Nancy?
Yes.
And Carla, yes, and that motion passes. Thank you, everyone. And I should say, we did have a neighborhood open house, last Monday. We have a lot of the same people attending. We did have, a new person come. I think it's always good to get the information out. I feel like there is a lot of redundancy. We decided to cancel our community meeting in January. We will, just because all of the information is always presented here, and it's just a lot of work to do that. And I shouldn't say it that way. I should say that as we move more towards the vote, we are gonna, there's gonna be possibly groups in town who are gonna, vote and push for one direction or the other. And there will be a lot of information sessions and stuff that we will be available for with that. But this, asking the community for their input has been really valuable to this whole process so far. So our next meeting is gonna be on.
Carl, if you can, just to be
Yeah,
able to
sure.
kind of, I just wanted to thank you for the presentation. I thought your presentation was excellent
Thank you.
there, and actually it did spark, even the audience, that a seasoned audience, still had questions. And so it did bring up, kind of additional clarifying questions, and I thought that, that really the discussion was, it was an advanced and different discussion than we've had in past ones, so it definitely lends itself, there's reasons to have them, even if you're getting the same audience, and I echo what what you were just commenting. I think it's gonna start to branch, as we get into 2025 and we get a little bit closer to having a date of the vote. But again, I really want to thank you for kind of all of your work there. I know doing those presentations, preparing for them aren't easy, doing them aren't easy. So you really did a great job with it, and and again, I think it's we're kind of well set up going forward.
LBA gives me all my information. And the communications working group has been unbelievable. There were letters sent out by snail mail
Yeah.
to,
283, I think, we put together.
283.
Wow.
we're just trying to really reach everybody.
It was everybody within a 1,000-foot radius,
Right.
which is twice the distance we usually see.
That's great.
So, just so they would get that thing in the mail. And
How many people attended?
There weren't that many, were there?
No.
No, I mean,
Slightly less than that.
It's a tough time.
slightly,
probably 10 of neighbors, I would say.
Ed, you and who else?
12 of my closest friends.
Great. Thank you, everybody, for all your work this year. It's been we've made a lot of progress.
yeah.
Did you need to say
I
something?
was just going to say, there won't be probably any much more neighbour interest until we start doing a test well. And then, when the machines arrive on site and people say, what's going on here?
Yeah, we should have an open house after the test well starts.
Yeah, so I think,
Yeah.
you have to have some activity on site in order to generate some interest from the neighbours. So don't be surprised if after the test well starts to drill that you get lots of phone
Yeah.
calls and requests for meetings and stuff like that.
We'll let them know too before that.
Yes.
Sure.
I'll entertain a motion.
When's our next meeting?
It's January 22nd.
January 22nd. Thanks. Sorry about that.
No,
Move to adjourn?
Second?
thank you. Pat,
Yes.
Sean,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Kirk,
Yes.
Ed,
Yes.
Greg,
Yes.
Nancy,
Yes.
and Carla. We're adjourned. Thanks, everyone. Happy holidays.
Have a good night.